Hi, and welcome to the Scribe Studio. My name is Mark Walker, and today I'm here with Josh Solomon.
How you doing, Mark?
I'm good. How are you, Josh?
Good.
All right. Thanks for coming back in to spend some time with us. The last time Josh was with us, he was teaching us about how to use the native query block in Scribe Online. So just as a refresher, what are some of the reasons you'd want to use native query?
Well, with native query, you can join tables where you wouldn't be able to join those in our normal query block.
Okay.
And you can filter your data with a much more granularity.
All right, so the end result of that, especially if you join tables, is a result set that works a little bit differently than if you're using our regular query block. There's another video we have that teaches you how to use what's called the for each child control block. And that's specifically used in situations where you're working with a source query that has relationships and you're getting back data. Like if you imagine an XML structure, you get back a header node and you have repeating nodes for each child object that goes with that.
Exactly.
Now, if you use this native query block, the results that you get back looks a little bit different, and consequently, you have to use a different design pattern in Scribe Online to work with that. So Josh is going to teach us about that different design pattern today.
Right, and if anyone's familiar with our Scribe Insight product, we have what we call our skip if repeated pattern, and this is very similar to that, and you'll see some similarities there.
Okay.
So, the first thing we want to do is we want to go into our SQL Manager, and we have a query here that brings back sales order and sales detail information. And what I'll do is I'll execute that query, and we can see that the sales order information is repeated from line to line. It's with each record. But if we go out to the end of our record set, we can see that the line items are different, the products are different. And this is reflective of what we have here in our ERP system. We have a number of orders, and then we have an order detail table that gives us multiple line items. So what we're going to talk about is how we deal with flattened data, denormalized data like this in native query with Scribe Online.
Right, so where that header information is repeated for each detail line that you have.
Exactly.
That's the key point.
So I do have a solution already created, but what we're going to do is we're going to create a new map and show you how we would drag these things across. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab our sample ERP system as a source and as a target. What we're going to do is we're going to take open orders, we're going to update those open orders to be closed, and we're going to take that order and create an invoice with multiple line items. So what we'll do is we'll drag our native query block over here, and we will copy our query that we have tested in Management Studio. And we will test that query. Again, if you saw our previous video on native query, you have to test the query before you move on, because the query itself, the testing of the query, actually produces the metadata for the map to work with.
Okay.
Okay, we've got a good test. For each result, we want to determine whether or not that record is the first record in the header set. So, so we have our flattened detail, we have orders, multiple line items, but because the order header information is repeated, we need to determine whether or not this is our very first header item. So what we'll do is we'll put an if block in here, and we will determine if that order number is first. And the way we do that is we use our logicals, and we have our ISREPEATED function.
Okay.
This is where it is very similar. It is very similar to our Insight product. We're going to check to see if the order number has been repeated from the previous row that was retrieved by the record set.
Right.
So what I'm going to do is check to see whether it's false in this case. One thing that I did fail to mention just now, this is an eccentricity of the ISREPEATED feature. The field name must be in double quotes.
All right, so normally field names don't have to be in double quotes.
Yes, and that is
specific
a
case
little bit counterintuitive. When you're using a field name in a formula, we don't normally need it to be in double quotes, but this is a special case.
Could you indulge me and do a favor? Could you change the name of that if block, the label on it, just so that'll make it more obvious to people?
Sure. So if the order is not repeated.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So if the order is not repeated, then obviously we want to create a new order header.
All right.
And after we create that new order header, we will want to go on and create order line items. So what I'll do is I'll, again, we'll create the header, and then we create the line items. Now, you'll notice that the pattern I chose here doesn't put the line item under the else block. The else block is not required.
Right.
We will just fall right down through this process and we will create the line.
So it's okay to leave the else block empty then?
Exactly. What happens is for each record that you have pulled back from your native query, you want to create a line item. Every record has a unique line item.
Right.
So it doesn't matter that we put it in the else block or not. It's actually, if we were to do that, then we'd have to have some additional processing outside of it. So that's the pattern that we want to use in order to create headers and line items. We simply do an if, and we check to see if there's an is repeated.
Okay.
So that's the pattern we'll use.
But one thing I should point out is that it would be important then that your source query orders by that order number.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't,
if we take a look, we can see that I have ordered by order number and line item.
Yep.
So, okay, so that's the pattern that we use. I'm going to go into the existing item that I have here, and you can see that I used exactly the same pattern. I'm creating a header item here, and after I create that new header, I'm actually updating the existing header to be a closed order.
Oh, okay.
Because what I'm doing within my header create is I'm actually creating invoices. So the order number is actually going to change from order to invoice.
Got it.
Okay. And then we use the same pattern. I've just got all my fields mapped in this particular map. So what we'll do is we'll come out to the solution and we will run this solution.
Okay.
And now that it's finished, what we see is we'll come back to our Management Studio. We'll take a look at our orders table, and I will run that query.
Okay.
And we'll see that the order that we just used is now closed, but now there's an open invoice. If we come over to our details, here's the order, and then if we run that, we can see that two separate and unique line items have come across based on that pattern.
On the invoice.
Yes.
Okay,
exactly.
great.
So that's how we do a skip if repeated pattern for those of you familiar with Insight.
Terrific.
And that's how we deal with child records for those of you who understand the for each child block within Scribe Online, and we can't use that in native query.
Terrific. Well, Josh, thank you very much for sharing your knowledge with us. Really appreciate it. For those of you, thank you very much for spending some time with us in the Scribe Studio, and we hope you come back another time to learn some more tips and tricks from our experts.